bass generation, 50 years ago, you wouldn't have seen probably a single female bass player in the section. And, that's really not long ago. And we've changed so much from there.
I had a fabulous time connecting with today's guests. They are doing super cool work, and we get into all sorts of interesting topics. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are talking today with Evangeline Tang, Phoebe Clark, and Ija Q, who created the Bassists with Boobs Instagram account in July 2020 to improve the online representation of bass players and create a positive and empowering community. And I heard them on an interview late at night as I was just surfing, and I tried to link to it. I can't find it. Sorry, apologies. Feel free to email me if you can find the link to that, because I was curious who was behind this account. Turns out the three of them are. And so I reached out to do this interview. And in the meantime, I log on one day to YouTube and I see that Geoff Chalmers of Discover Double Bass had them come to Leeds and do an interview with them. And it's super cool. Well, I'll just save it for the chat. This is a really fun one. All four of us, I think we have a really good time. We get into some really interesting topics. They're doing great work. Definitely follow them on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. That's all linked up. Quick shout out to our sponsors, Dorico, Ear Trumpet Labs, and Modacity. More on them later, but let's get into this conversation with the founders of Bassists with Boobs. It's nice to meet all of you, and it's nice to see you all over the Discover Double Bass YouTube channel and Instagram. That was so cool. What a great feature. That's just great that you all got connected that way with Geoff.
It was so exciting, and I think for us it's even more exciting because we had been stuck inside, and to kind of get out and do something, and Geoff was just so lovely to us, and it was so nice to see the other girls because it was the first time we've met as a group since we started the account. So
wow.
So no, it was wonderful.
Yeah, we'd never met before, so it was such a big thing for us, especially.
That makes sense.
Crazy.
It never even occurred to me that would be the case, but of course that makes sense. I just sort of assumed that you had met. Okay, wow. Well, what an extra special occurrence. Then where did that take place? Did Geoff come to London to film that, or where was that?
We all went up to Leeds. So
Okay.
we were all around an hour away from London, all of us. And
Okay.
we traveled up to Leeds for it, which was super fun.
Okay, cool. I was in Leeds about a year ago filming courses for Discover Double Bass, and it was funny. It was the cheapest European ticket I've ever gotten in my life, and I thought, why is it so cheap? And then I thought, oh, Leeds in January, maybe not the number one tourist destination, but it was lovely. I really enjoyed the city.
Yeah, we're not allowed to really kind of stop anywhere. There's no cafes, there's no pubs, there's nothing open. So it was very much a one stop and then go back home. But no, it was great fun. I've never been there before, so it was a first for me. And the others travelled on the train together.
Wow.
Yeah, we did. Me and Ija have never met in real life, so we met at the train station. It was mental.
Mm-hmm.
Good time.
I'll bet. Yeah, that's yeah. Well, the UK and the US, we're the worst at this pandemic thing apparently. So I don't know if things are. It sounds like they're about the same in London as they are. I'm in San Francisco and California. We're finally starting to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and music's kind of coming back. Yeah, like there's some outdoor cafes that have music again, and so. But I was just chatting with Phoebe Russell last week, and over in Australia, she's playing concerts, and they have. So I'm sort of like seeing the future, talking to folks from Australia.
All my family's in Australia, and we tell them the kind of numbers over here of the COVID stuff, and they're just like, oh my God, don't leave the house, don't go anywhere, oh my God, because, they've got nothing. There's no cases, they can do whatever they want.
They don't even need to wear masks, do they?
No masks. So we're back at uni now. All three of us have just gotten the go ahead, so we're all getting back to playing, hopefully with some other people, like this week, next week.
Wow, congratulations. That I'm right now, I feel like I'm looking back at last year, and it's like the early stages of a disaster movie. Like everything's fine, but our last gig here in San Francisco was about exactly a year ago, and my bass in the corner, it's been in the corner for the last year except for playing. So it's so cool to hear that that you're going to actually be back, that you're back at school, and that you're going to be doing some sort of playing. That's great.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Exactly.
Hopefully. I just can't wait for the time when I can actually have a desk partner.
Oh my gosh.
Because at the
Tell me
moment,
about it.
there's 2 meters, everyone's 2 meters apart. You don't feel like you're playing with anyone. You're just kind of playing with yourself, trying to communicate to others. It's so difficult. And I'm sure Jason, I'm sure you know that as well, but it's not easy to do that kind of playing.
I mean, even when we recorded for Discover Double Bass, it was so difficult to suddenly get into the swing of things again, to actually sit, and I have to remember to watch Evangeline and Phoebe.
Yeah, we had like less than an hour and we were like, wait, we actually haven't played with anybody in like months. Let alone with each other.
And it's like the opposite of what you want to do as musicians, is like be together and hear those vibrations and feel those vibrations. But it's still cool. I mean, great job even being separated like that. But yeah, and I haven't done any performing like that at all during the pandemic, but it does strike you as a little bit weird, right? It's like, hello over there, you know.
That was mental. I think that also the first time I played out of the first lockdown was with Phoebe, actually.
Yeah, we did a rehearsal, yeah. And it was weird just because everyone didn't know, we didn't even know how to kind of like pay attention to the conductor and just be socially normal. You just feel like, I don't know how to talk to people, and no one has anything to talk about because everyone's doing the exact same thing.
We all just sat there. I entered in, I think I was late or something. I was classic late. And I walk in and everyone's just sort of sat there awkwardly because they just can't talk to each other because they're like 2 meters apart.
And
so it was really strange.
Normally in university and everything, when we get on stage, luckily at like Royal College, yeah, everyone's chatting away. The section's really sociable. It's just one nice community. But I think it's going to be weird when we get back because I don't think everyone's going to act the same way.
Yeah. Hopefully, if we look at pandemics in the past, we eventually get through this. And hopefully, I was talking to a conductor here in the States last night, and she was saying the thing she misses the most is that musical chaos before rehearsal starts, where everybody's concertos and this and that, and people are talking. It's sort of like the sonic manifestation of the human brain, right? And then all of a sudden there's silence, and it's like everybody coming together and focusing. That's something I remember what that's like, but it's been a good year plus, for me at that point.
Oh,
yeah, now I think it's just silence, really.
It's like, what have you been doing? Oh, you've been the same. Like, nothing.
Right. Well, I'm so, and we could talk about whatever you want. Again, I learned after 800 of these things, the best structure is no structure. So it's just like we're hanging out, and but we can go through and edit anything. But so congratulations. It's so good that you all finally met. But I just love the work you're doing, and it's like it's something that is just so important. So just thank you for doing this, and it just reminds me there are 10,000 different things we could talk about, but. A friend and colleague of mine, Megan McDevitt, who I don't know if you have been in touch with her, or I don't know if she's been on the feed yet for Instagram, but she has been doing a session at conferences here in the States called Bass and Gender. And it's just it's so great to see her. She was here in San Francisco. She's from the Bay Area here, but she was here working with our Golden Gate Bass Camp a couple years ago. And all the, 10 to 18-year-olds, just talking about that. And it's just such it's such an important thing. So just thank you. Maybe talk about the idea. Maybe introduce yourselves. I guess just go around real quick. You have experience doing that at this point, and let folks know.
Yeah, sure. I think that, well, first of all, I'm Phoebe, and I study at the Royal College of Music. I met Evangeline at the Royal College of Music. She is 2 years above me at uni, and then I met Ija when we were auditioning for conservatoires. So we've all known each other separately, but we only came together in July. And yeah, we started this platform during the pandemic as a way to just keep each other inspired, looking at musicians who we resonate with and who we've never seen before. So creating this platform of people who haven't had that shine, who haven't gotten that stage to be on stage, and people don't know who they are. And it's amazing seeing all these musicians who, I don't know, I feel like we never would have seen unless we put them out there and got in touch with them. We're very active in messaging people. I mean, like, we would love to feature you. So we're trying to empower people. We're trying to inspire. We're encouraging people to post their footage of themselves and put themselves out there. Because if we don't do it, then, if they don't do it, then it's never going to happen. So yeah, Evangeline, do you want to...
Hi, I'm Evangeline, and like I said, like Phoebe said, we met when I was doing my undergraduate at the RCM. And really, I kind of had this idea to start this account for like a quite a long time, only because like I kind of felt like when I was always online, I kind of just wanted to. When I would see a female bass player, especially a soloist, playing so well, it would make me so happy, because obviously you don't see anybody like you doing the same sort of stuff that you're doing, and it's kind of inspiring to see that. So I kind of just wanted a place where I just put all of these amazing bass players and put them in one place. Basically, it was a bit selfish. I just wanted to put them in one place and be like, "Hi, look at all these amazing bass players." And I just wanted to go back and be like, "Evangeline, you can also do it," because, it was just, yeah. And so when I first got the Instagram account together, I told Phoebe about it. And then also I met Ija during the pandemic, like online. I think it was like during a music quiz or something. And then we were all talking, because we all had practice accounts. And we were very active during the pandemic. If you've seen our stuff, shameless plug, go follow our Instagrams. So I got to know these girls like quite well, especially because we all were doing the same sort of thing online, and yeah, it's been great. Ija?
Yeah, okay. So my name is Ija. I think there isn't a lot more to say about our Bassists with Boobs account, because you two have covered it all so well. But I mean, what I think is really great about what we've created is the sense of community here. It's not even just we're just posting people and stuff. Everybody's constantly messaging each other, hyping each other up. And like, I'm making so many friends, and I bet other people are as well. And I think for me, it was such a refreshing idea that you guys came up with and approached me with in the first pandemic. And so I came from like an all-girls school, and, you know, I grew up with like so many strong female figures around me. And when I went to university, a lot of that, I don't want to say it disappeared, but it wasn't the same kind of environment. So when you came up with this idea, I was like 1,000 times, yes, this is exactly what I want. This is what I miss. And creating that kind of community where women empower women, men empower women. And it's great, you know, it's just such a great place to be.
People have been saying such great things about my course with Discover Double Bass Beginners Classical Bass. Here is Nicholas Walker, professor of double bass at Ithaca College and past president of the International Society of Bassists. Nicholas writes, Jason draws from this vast network with his contagious enthusiasm and love of learning. Presented through the beautifully organized and easily accessible framework of Discover Double Bass, this is a terrific learning experience for any beginner, as well as a great model for any new teacher. I am blushing, Nicholas. Thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled with how this course came out. Geoff Chalmers and the whole team at Discover Double Bass are so professional. It was such a great experience, and it was the best representation of what I would love to take every single beginner through in terms of format and presentation. And I'm just so happy that it's out there. You can learn more. We've got a link in the show notes, or you can just visit discoverdoublebase.com/Jason Heath. This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the advanced music notation software from Steinberg. And one of the coolest things about this piece of software, there's so many things, but one of them is their popover option. And it has sped up things so much for me when I'm working in scores. Here's Senior Product Manager Daniel Spreadbury on how popover mode works.
There's like hundreds of notations that you might want to create, and trying to remember what to type, is it Command Shift Alt, Vulcan Death Grip 7 for this particular notation. But the nice thing about a popover is all you have to remember is the letter of the thing you want to create. So D for dynamics, T for tempo, M for meter, K for key signature.
It might seem like a simple thing, but you would not believe how much that has sped up my workflow. And I'm not even really a composer. I do a lot of arrangements, I do a lot of exercises, but it has taken my workflow probably at least up to 5 times faster. Just that one mode. I can't say enough good things about Dorico. I love it. I use it every single day. There's a free version, Dorico SC, that you can download that lets you do practically everything for up to 2 stabs. So check it out. Dorico.com will take you to their page on Steinberg's website. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. I'm just so glad that this is out here, and I hope that young bassists, old bassists, everybody, but especially young bassists and young bassists that are don't identify as male, see themselves in what you're doing. I think that's just so important. Something I've noticed. I'm a good generation older than the three of you. Something I've noticed over the years is, you go into schools here in the States, I'll just talk about my world here, and you either see, if you look at the students in the bass section, they're typically one of two things. They're either all guys or it's about 50-50. And it's interesting. Rarely do I go into a school or over the years and there's one female bassist. It's the sort of thing where, like, there's this culture. If there are some female bassists, it's like other students coming up see themselves in those bassists, and then that perception that we'll just say girls can't play bass, which is obviously nonsense, but it's a perception, and it's something that, at different levels, obviously starting out and then college and even the professional world, it's something that is changing. But what you're doing, I think this is going to help. I think you're going to see a ripple effect going forward with the sort of work you're doing. I think it's just brilliant. Yeah,
you make a really good point that it's just still a really new thing. Like the bass generation, 50 years ago, you wouldn't have seen probably a single female bass player in the section. And, that's really not long ago. And we've changed so much from there. But it's proof that we've still got a long way to go. And like you say, which is great that you said, you walk into a school, if you do see a section of all male bassists, then where's that role model for someone to look at? Like, will you be shocked if you see 8 women bassists in an orchestra? You need to just picture that and be like, if I saw that in an orchestra, would that shock me? And I think it would shock everyone. I can't see one person who that wouldn't shock at the moment. So we want to change that. And then we need to get to a stage where having more than 50% in a section of women is the normal thing. So yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about it together, and especially in our comment sections and in our DMs. It's all about, like, why did we feel like we are indifferent, and because of that, in sort of that feeling of that we feel indifferent, we are sort of scared to put ourselves out there, but not unlike the people in the past who all kind of look the same. We kind of feel like we're an imposter almost in our situation. And it doesn't matter if you're female or any other gender or of a different color. It's kind of, or even if you are, you look like a typical the typical bass player. It's kind of like we all have this. I talk to loads and loads of people, lots of bassists, who all kind of say the same thing. I am not good enough because I don't look like them. I'm not good enough because I am this. I'm not good enough because I didn't play for long enough. Lots of excuses. And I think it's just like, also what we realize is that's also kind of what we stand for. It's kind of to say, hey, it doesn't matter. We're all in it together and we all support each other. It's not a competition. It's all about, if you're a good bass player, then you're a good bass player. And like TP said, it's all about confidence. If you are confident in what you do, you're already halfway there.
And I think in order to get there, actually, the first step is to get someone in that section so that everybody else who goes for the jobs later down the line goes, hey, I can be like them. I relate to this. I feel included. There's someone that represents how I feel. And with that, I think the doors will open for opportunities and people's confidence, really. To be able to go for the job in the first place.
The doors will absolutely open. That's the thing. And if you look at other professions, right, that has happened. Like my wife is I call her a recovering musician. She's a radiologist now here in the States. And radiology, you go back 30 years, it was almost exclusively male. Now it is 50-50, or maybe even skews predominantly female here in the States. But you still have that older generation. She was told during her training, you'll make a very good lady radiologist. That kind of nonsense. And but that we, in the last couple of International Society of Bassists conventions, there's been this sort of study, I guess we could call it, of what you're talking about right here, with that drop off that you see with female bassists as they're headed towards the profession, we'll say. Because here in primary, secondary school here in the States, it really is, it's probably not 50-50 male-female split, but it's getting close. Like here in the San Francisco public schools, it's pretty close. But then you get to university and that drops way off. And anybody who's spent time around 18 to 22-year-old bassists knows that there can be, especially if it's mostly male, this fraternity house sort of thing. And I think back to when I was teaching at DePaul, you walk in and there were like dirty tuxedo shirts hanging on top of bass scrolls, and just like this sort of like what you think of as like, late teens, early 20s male, doofusry, just sort of like bleeds into
locker room style.
Yeah, there we go. That's a good way. Locker room style.
It's just so funny hearing you say this, because Evangeline and I could just see us laughing at each other, because that's definitely the vibe at college. And
too relatable.
Yeah, there's just going to be stuff left everywhere, and it's just either shirts or shoes or something.
It's a boys' world.
It's a boys' world. And it's just funny because... We are
entering a boys' world.
And we definitely stick together as women. And I think we noticed very early on that, like, we just want to be best mates because it makes it easier for us to relate to things. And obviously we're not going to drop our femininity to fit in with that world. That's not what we're going to do at all. And I think it's also interesting, like what you're talking about in the States. We're really interested in looking at it across different countries because it is different wherever you go. And I think looking at maybe some places have laws put in place where they want to, actually make it part of the rules. Like you need to have this amount of women, you need to have this amount of something. And I think it's interesting comparing it because I know that that's not something that's in the UK, but there are orchestras that definitely have it in place.
I think in the UK there are especially with the BBC orchestras especially, they have that kind of work rule because it's also associated with the BBC where you have to have 50-50. But
Which is brilliant.
It's amazing. But then you look at the difference in the sections and that's where it gets quite interesting because we talk a lot about also because bass is kind of considered a boy's instrument. It's quite an interesting topic to see across the section, to see the splits. And it's kind of like, is that going back to from the very root of the cause of the bass is a man's instrument, or the femininity of the violin, or that therefore belongs to females, sort of thing. It's the same in the brass section, and it's quite interesting to see the differences. But kind of just what we want to say is basically you don't have to be that stereotype at all, and it's not like we are saying that men shouldn't play the bass and we don't like men and whatever. We just want we are in this world, and we just want to be included.
And we definitely, like, one of the things that we want to push as well is that in no way, shape or form is man shaming okay in this profession. It is not what we are wanting. We don't want that anywhere on our page because that's not the problem. The men in this stage, we've gotten to the stage where it's our responsibility to make sure women and non-binary and other genders feel comfortable to get to this stage, despite of what they might think a man is thinking of them, because that's not relevant. It really at this stage, it's not okay. And we don't want someone coming onto our page and feeling like we're targeting them, because that's not it. We want to have conversations. We want to help people understand. If you're a male bass player and you're sitting there going, I don't quite get where you're coming from, that's completely fine. It's our job to talk to you and go, we're happy to talk about this and try and make you understand where we're coming from. As long as you're supporting us and you're open to listening, then, that's all we can ask for. So yeah, please don't come on where we really don't want to shame men whatsoever, because, you can't not go to an audition just to get one, female person on the orchestra. Like, that's not how it works. So yeah, I think we want to push that really well.
I think more than anything, we've got to, and what we have been doing and trying our best to do is shift the focus onto the women, the non-binary, the basically not have the focus on men. This is a point where we're not focusing on men. We're not focusing on things that would, all the hearsay, like, oh, men generally think this, or like this man said that, whatever. Doesn't matter. This comment was made, and we're going to focus on how to empower the woman that, suffered from it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that especially what Yijo was saying is just we're not going to focus on the negatives at all. We're not going to focus on what's wrong with our industry, especially because we know only us women know, especially because it affects us so deeply for us, and we just want other people to understand who are not of the typical just if you do fit that box, we just want you to understand our point of view. And also, yeah, like you just saying, just empower the women to make us more confident, to put ourselves out there. And yeah,
essentially it's not focusing on the problem, it's finding a solution, really.
Yeah,
we accept the past is what it was, we accept the current situation is what it is. Okay, but what can we do to change that? What can we do to make the scenario better? And you really don't gain much from just focusing on the past so much.
Yeah, it's like kind of why don't we see so many of these talented women bassists and other genders? It's because they're not confident enough. It comes back to the whole vicious cycle. But we had a DM actually last night saying, it really touched me because I kind of related to the whole thing, because my whole journey in undergrad was basically like, I don't relate to everybody else. Like I'm not as good as everybody else. I will never be as good as anybody else because I don't look like them. And I kind of didn't even put myself in the kind of category of I will be successful. And then because of that whole sort of mindset, I got the same DM last night saying exactly the same thing.
They said, I wish I had this platform when I was studying, and that's like music to our ears, because that's you know, obviously that's what we want people to look at it and go, yes, I love this, I need this. And I think that's what it comes from. There are so many people who didn't know they needed this really until they've seen it, which is, I think, the same for all three of us as well.
Her DMs were basically saying that she didn't feel confident enough when she was at college to practice as hard, she was basically discouraged from the whole environment. And that was really like, it's a shame. It's like when I heard that, it's like such a shame.
Because it puts an end to some people's careers. Like that can be the end of it. If they stop practicing, that could be the end. So it's as simple as that in one respect.
My practicing companion, Modacity, this awesome app, it is so great for getting you to really think about your practicing. And there's what's called a deliberate practice mode. It tracks everything that you are improving upon and time spent in every piece. It's just so great. Here is founder and CEO of Modacity, Mark Gelfo, on what the app does.
I use the deliberate practice feature in Modacity a ton. So what I'm logging my improvements, I improved my articulation today by using this strategy. And then I see that in my log. So I see all the improvements that I made, the strategy that led to that improvement. I see the star rating as well as the time spent.
It is so satisfying to be able to look back on your history like Mark's describing. I do that all the time, and it keeps me inspired and energized and feeling like I'm really making progress. Learn more at modacity.co. And if you visit our site, we've got a special offer for lifetime access for this app. Thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Modacity. This episode is brought to you by Ear Trumpet Labs. They make hand-built mics out of Portland, Oregon, and they have an excellent mic for upright bass called Nadine. The Nadine is a condenser mic with a clear, natural sound and incredible feedback rejection. This mic is a completely new design. The head mounts in between the strings above the tailpiece with a rubber grommet, and the body securely straps to the tailpiece with Velcro elastic. A 14-inch Mogami cable connects the two parts, making it easy to place on any bass. It's durable and holds up to the demanding needs of the instrument while offering excellent sound quality. Ear Trumpet Labs is offering a free t-shirt just for Contrabass Conversations listeners with the purchase of a mic. Just visit www.eartrumpetlabs.com/contrabass to claim yours and check out the Nadine. Well, and we're so fragile as human beings, that's the thing. Like we're these highly influenceable creatures, and so the power of Instagram to reach people, in a way that nobody could be reached 20 years ago. We go back to when I was in college, which is more than 20 years ago at this point, I think, but it was 20 years ago. But I saw the people in Chicago where I was going to school, maybe the International Society of Bassists magazine once every few months. There was no YouTube, there was no bass TV. And but now you got this platform. I'll use Phoebe Russell as an example again, playing like a rock star, as good as any human ever, and anybody with an internet connection can see that. So there's a model, and so it's just a brilliant way. And the tone and tenor, there is no male bashing, it's a sense of that at all in what you do. I just think it's really it's the positivity radiates through in what you're doing. Let me share an observation. I've in my weird thing that I do with this podcast, like 800 of these things. I've noticed a couple trends over time. So I just want to share them and see if you have any thoughts. Okay, so if I've done this enough so that people reach out to me and either volunteer themselves to be interviewed or suggest someone else. Almost zero women ever volunteer themselves to be interviewed for the podcast. So if I do nothing, if I get busy and it's like conference time and I just like respond to inbound emails, I look up and I've had like 20 male guests. Probably guys that kind of look about like me, about my age, kind of do what I do. When I am proactive and reach out, every without exception, every female guest I've had on has been just as interesting as any male guest I've had on. But if I don't do that proactive work, and that there are some exceptions. I have had a few because I've talked about this on the podcast, and so as a result, some women have reached out a little bit more. So, but that's just something I've noticed over the years in what I do, and I think that sort of speaks to what you were talking about a little bit with that, kind of house of cards thing that can be happening.
Definitely.
I think that speaks volumes to us, and I think what you might find interesting is that we never get any messages saying, "Can I feature?" We message everyone. Mm-hmm. So just like you, if we don't reach out to people, they won't. And, like probably about 25% of the time, people respond with, "No, I don't have any good recordings. No, I don't like how I'm playing at the moment. Give me a few months, blah, 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 blah." Mm-hmm. And
it's so funny.
You start to realize that it's a confidence issue. And it's because, this makes sense. I wouldn't feel like I was worthy of being on your podcast. And it's this kind of inbuilt fear of just, well, I'm not good enough to do that. So why would I put myself forward? So I think it's so interesting. And thank you for mentioning that, because I think it will resonate with a lot of people. And hopefully more female and non-binary and other genders start to message you and go, actually, I'd love to be a part of
Jason.
it.
Yeah, reach out. That there is no, like, I'm not kidding. There's no rhyme or reason or structure. I have no master plan. I'm just like connecting with people that I'd be connecting with in person over a beverage or that sort of thing. But here's the flip side to that coin that I've also thought a lot about, and I'd love your thoughts on that. And I've talked openly about this too. I don't want to reach out to someone and say, "Hey, female, be on my podcast because you're a woman and I need more women guests." I don't think anyone wants to be put in that position. So it's that funny balance, right? Where like, but it's so important. And what you're doing is so much more immediate than what I'm doing, because I do this like long form audio thing that probably 5% of the population would want to sit down and listen to. Instagram, people are flipping through it. You connect and you see and you hear them. And so I think what you're doing will probably, but still people listen to this and this is going to be around forever probably. So that's the tricky thing I'm always kind of thinking about. I hope that when kind of we share people, that it gets to that stage where so many other people know them, that when you message them, it's not something like, "Oh, you're a woman, I'd love to feature you." It's like, actually, you're so popular now. So many people have been, messaging you, sharing you, that I'm just contacting you because you're doing well. Yeah, that's the only reason why you're contacting them. So I think it would never come across like I'm contacting you because I want to be diverse in my choices. And I don't think that is a stage where we're at now. I think that, you would only contact someone because you want to interview them. So, yeah.
I think also, the first thing that jumps to mind, if any of us three got contacted now to speak for some interview or podcast or whatever, the first thing we think of is because I'm a woman and they want to bump up the numbers. Like, that's such negative thinking. And I think we're kind of past that stage now where we've shared so many people, they've got an extra platform, they've got their name out. It's past the point where I'd hope that they would think in that way. I'd hope that they would think in a more positive way, like, yeah, I'm a big name now, I'm doing great,
Yeah. Let me share one last observation, just because we sort of have this unique opportunity. I've got this like large backlog of things. Over the years, I don't know what this says about the guests I talk to or me as a person, but if I look at the waveform audio of the interviews, I can generally tell if it's a male or a female I'm chatting with, because this is a massive generalization, but I kind of can, generally, not much of me talking when I'm talking to most of my male guests. A whole lot of them, much more conversational in general. I'm generalizing, but I've been able to tell this enough, and I've spoken openly about this too. And again, I don't know what that says about anything, about me or people or whatever, but that's just one last generalization. Things I've learned from the podcast share over the last 15 years.
I'm sure it's entirely like case by case scenario and like it entirely person dependent. But I mean, from my general experience, women are good listeners, and they want to have conversations. That's just my my experience and people that I know. Yeah, I don't know what that says, but
I don't know either. And again, it's probably irrelevant, but it's just something that I've also thought about. I generally, having done this enough, I generally, I'm kind of interrupting you all just because we have the Zoom delay, but I generally just sit and listen. And if there's something for me to say, we'll start talking. And so oftentimes with male guests, again, these are big generalizations, they'll just talk at me for a large interval of time. Sometimes I don't even use my audio because all it is me like laughing, and that is not, and I'm sure I've had a female guest on that's been that way too. And I know I've had male guests where it's much more conversational, but that's just, if I did some sort of study, which I'm not going to take the time to do, of the 800 of hours of these, that's probably a trend.
I think what's so nice for us is that like in this kind of situation, it's important for us to know that you guys are in support of us, and the fact that you get us on these platforms, it's really important that we hear you saying the same kind of stuff that we're saying as well, because it shows that we all understand each other and that we're on the same playing field. So for it to be more conversational is really nice, and it just shows that you're thinking the same things that we're thinking and everyone's on the same page. It just makes it easier for people to kind of join in with what we're doing.
Yeah. I think what's also different about what we do is that we are also, it's kind of a learning platform almost as well, because we're learning from you. We're always constantly learning from the people we talk to, the people we feature, these type of things, like the podcast, the interviews. Like, it's crazy how we just exchange our experiences and we see how it is in different parts of the world. And it's great. I've really been enjoying learning about other people's experiences, and yeah.
It also proves to us what we still have to work on in our own lives and our own personalities. And it teaches you that as much as you preach this stuff, to actually put it into practice is quite difficult. And all three of us have moments where we're just not confident. And the thought of putting up an Instagram video on one day is terrifying. And the thought of doing it the next day is absolutely fine. And you really need to just push yourself. And as much as we all say to other people, confident, post your stuff, of course, it's hard for us some days. But we know that now that we're in this position, if we're not doing it, then how are we preaching, that vision that we want to share? So it's definitely taught us a lot about ourselves in the process, I think.
I think it's very interesting, Jason, what you say about, the difference in who speaks and for how long and all of that stuff. I was generally thinking, like, what kind of engagement do we actually want on our platforms? I was thinking, it actually doesn't mean an awful lot to us if someone just comments like a bunch of emojis. It would mean much more for someone to read the post in depth, go away, think about it, really listen to this story, than to just quickly react to it with like a thumbs up. It's that kind of listening and understanding. There's the surface level kind where you can give a quick reaction, and there's the on a much deeper level, and that's really important. That's a real listening that we want people to do. Really listen to people's stories, consider what this means for them, their future, and how the person who's listening is relating to it, what they can do to benefit the situation.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love doing these long form audio things. This is what we humans have been doing since we were humans, right? For tens of thousands of years, sitting around and talking with each other, and it's just, it allows for people to really show their true selves. Because if you sit around and talk with someone for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever, it's going to come out. And conversation is the one tool we humans really do have. So as we're trying to change these things, and again, I think we're going to look back in 10 years, and you've been doing this for since July 2020, so you're not even a year into doing this, but I think we're going to be able to look at 2020, 2021. Well, we're going to look at a lot of things about this period, pandemics and such, but I think that the work you're doing is really going to make a difference. And I just look at certain people, like Barry Green is an example of somebody who is he's taught all over the place, but he taught here in San Francisco for a long time. And you can he's always encouraged everybody to play bass, but he's motivated a lot of females to pick up the bass. And you can see in the San Francisco public schools, and he hasn't even lived here for 10 years, you can see the influence of Barry Green because it's about 50% female in all the schools. And it's just because, oh, your older sister played bass, so now I'm playing bass. And it's, it got into the culture here, and it got into the orchestra directors culture too. They're like, oh yeah, we have lots of females play bass. See, look, we got it. And so it's interesting to see. And then this uniquely powerful, these like crazy nuclear weapon type tools that we have, like social media, to reach out. It'll be really interesting to see what effect that has. The whole Instagram as a motivation for practicing and bettering yourself, I think that's so interesting. And that's something, I guess I'm just the wrong generation, but I watch people and it really seems like it's a way that people really are keeping themselves motivated. It seems like that's true for all of you, right?
Yeah, it's keeping yourself accountable. It's going, I need to record a video today, so I need to sit on my stool and do that. And the moment you start recording, an hour later, you're like, okay, I think I've got one now. And you've done an hour of practice. And you just sit there like, oh, that was easy. So I think for us, that's why we all started it, to keep ourselves accountable. Lots of people like Evangeline are doing the 100 days of practice thing where you decide to do,
I was very against it at the beginning, but then my motivation went down low because, the general 100-day practice challenges, sometimes you're just like, they've been playing long notes for every single post for the last 10 posts.
But I think Instagram, for the large part, Instagram is not used for that kind of thing. It's used for your kind of personal life. But what we're doing, all the people that I follow on my bass account are doing the exact same thing that we're doing. And it's really motivating because you just get inspired. And this is obviously not just by women, this is by everyone. And all of these people supporting each other and messaging with tips on stuff, or messaging and being like, yes, oh my God, I relate to that problem so much. And it just makes you feel at home and makes you feel like you're not doing it by yourself. And we talk to people all over the world. The amount of people in Spain and Brazil and, in different parts of Europe and the US, especially in the US, we talk to a lot of people from the US, and it makes you realize that this is not just you fighting this battle, it's everyone. So it's brilliant. I think Instagram is great for this kind of thing.
And it definitely turns like a very boring and horrible experience recording yourself in lockdown into something a lot more fun. And, you end up with a really nice feed, lots of friends, plenty of conversation, and people hyping you up, you hyping other people up. It's just a great outcome of a very rubbish scenario, really.
You get to look back as well on old videos and go, wow, like I have improved. I sound so much better than I did a year ago. And that's something which you don't normally do if you're just recording yourself for a submission or something. If it's on this platform, everyone can see it. You can scroll back and be like, oh wow, I have improved. So I think it's brilliant. I would encourage anyone to do the same thing, even if it's just private, even if it's just for yourself to look at. I think it's great.
Also, just recording yourself in general, the amount of things that you pick up on that you can eliminate before your teacher gets to pick up on the same things is just brilliant. Like the number of times where I just know from listening back to my own recording, like, oh, my teacher's going to say this, my teacher's going to point out this. I can see it. Here is the evidence. And now I have a chance to change it so that it doesn't get picked up on my lesson.
It's like what every teacher wishes their students would do, right? Because what have people been telling ever since recording technology was invented? Record yourself. I've had some recording device by me ever since I was a kid, but my motivation is pretty low to do that a lot of the time. So you have that. And then what are we doing as musicians? We're putting ourselves out in public. Isn't that what we're doing? So what a great way. That's like when I have this talk I give about storytelling. And one of the advice tips I've always given is like, find a way to put yourself out there in public, whether it's writing or doing this, because you're going to learn, you're going to grow, you're going to develop that muscle. And just what a cool way to use that technology and to reach outside of your little community, right? Again, it's one of the advantages of what we have now versus 20 years ago. You're stuck with the 8 bass players in your studio, and maybe you're sick of all of them and their inane comments. So to be able to reach out into the world like that is just such a cool way to develop. I think.
Yeah, it's what we use Bassists with Boobs for as well. It's the exact same thing. You know, it's putting yourself out there. We have to be our own managers. We have to go, you know, how am I going to get a gig? How am I going to put my solo work out there? Because solo bass playing is becoming a lot of a bigger thing than it was like 20 years ago. Solo bassists are making moves and they're getting performance opportunities, and they're becoming really well known thanks to things like social media. So we want to promote people to be confident enough to post your solo playing, because we are orchestral instruments and we get very used to kind of sitting in the background, but we all have so much to offer with our solo playing. So to encourage people to send us their videos so that we can post it and so that they can see how many people are interacting and who are really impressed with what they're doing and sharing it. It makes you feel really great. And it's not just material. It goes deeper than that. You feel really amazing when someone who you aspire to be like reposts one of your videos. It's the most incredible feeling because you think, oh my God, they like what I'm doing. That means I must be doing okay. So I think it's really important for people to experience that.
I really, really adore the Instagram bass community, especially because I find it's so different from any of the other instruments. For some reason, we are much more tight-knit. I think it's also to the fact what Phoebe was saying is that because we are now solo playing, for us is just such a new thing for everyone to be doing, if you know what I mean. Like it's now a standard of everyone has to be a soloist sort of level. We're like the other instruments now. And because the bass community, it's not even because it's so small, it's because for some reason on Instagram, everybody knows each other. And it's kind of weird that I wouldn't, like Phoebe was saying, like I wouldn't expect a year ago, all of my favorite bass players reposting my stuff, commenting on my stuff, and also messaging me. That's crazy. You wouldn't find that in bassoon players. You wouldn't even find that in, I don't know, any others. I don't know. It's a different world. And it's crazy, but it's amazing. So really suggest it, anybody.
We're sociable people.
Yeah. I mean, we're humans. We're social beings.
That's one thing I've speculated on with the podcast a lot is like, what is it about bass players that makes us, because like I imagine you all haven't been to any of the ISB conventions because they're internationals in the title, but it's always here in the States. So, you know, quote unquote international. Sorry, ISB.
Come to the UK, come to London. We'll take you.
I know. But I mean, you get that vibe that you're talking about. So, and a line people have said to me in the past is we're a supportive instrument. You know, who goes, though you're absolutely right. Solo bass playing is exponentially growing in popularity. And I think social media has a lot to thank for it too. But generally, I think there are certain personalities that tend to go towards different instruments. And I remember chatting with my old teacher from the Chicago Symphony years ago, and it was like, "What's the worst audition to proctor?" And I thought, well, it's probably going to be percussion. He's like, "No, principal trumpet. There's nothing worse than 100 people that think they're going to be principal trumpet of the Chicago Symphony." That is so I think there is something to do with the personality of people getting to the instrument, but also I do think there's a little bit of, and I think this is changing as the standards improve, but we're still almost on the edge of looking ridiculous. You know, it's like you stop and then the bass player plays some horribly out of tune C sharp and everybody looks back. You know, I think there's not that we're just a walking comedy act, but I do think that there's something about, we tend to not maybe take ourselves as seriously as someone, say, in the first violins.
That's great. I think I love that. I love that
Very
most
true.
about the bass community. Like, yes, we are taking our playing more seriously, but ourselves, we don't take ourselves very seriously at all. And I love that.
You go to any rehearsal with Evangeline and she will laugh the whole time.
I'll just be absolutely in
She'll get
tears all the
told
time.
off. She'll get told off
I
because she's
can't
laughing
tell you
so
the amount
hard.
of times I've been told off just by laughing in the section because I don't know,
it just
it's just the
makes it
section,
fun.
isn't it?
Yeah.
The double
It
bass
makes
section
it
is just so
fun.
much fun. Yeah.
And you do want to have that good connection with your section. And it's really, I think, for a lot of London orchestras, they really value what your personality is. And we don't have quite as many blind auditions in the UK, I think, as you have in the US. And I think it is really important for orchestras and for bass sections to have that bond. You know, for you to play the same way, you have to understand each other the same way. And I think it is really important.
I think that's also the thing about going back to the whole the gender imbalance. It goes back to why is there also the balance so unequal? It's because who sits in the sections. It's kind of like, well, if it is a boys' world, well, we don't fit into that. We are all culprits of that. Actually, we were talking about it, about how we are we don't really feel like, because also of that sort of culture, we feel like we don't quite fit into that. And then the orchestra's quite scared of, I don't know, sometimes I go into a section that's full of men, and sometimes I don't know why they just feel a bit scared to talk to me, and I'm like,
they don't know what to say.
Yeah, they don't know what to say. And I feel like us, even when we're with those type of bass players, we turn into different people because we're kind of also trying to fit in. And yeah, I think we all kind of relate to that.
I think Ija is good at talking on this as well, and that kind of like lad culture kind of thing.
Yeah, Ija, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't really know what to say except that there is a lad culture. You can't really deny it. I don't know. I mean, the way the trial system works in the UK is very interesting. You know, several people get put on trial, and then it's about how well you fit in with the rest of the section, not just on a playing level, but also on a social level. And then
off the stage.
Yeah, exactly. With that comes, you know, hanging out with the rest of the section and stuff. And it can
lot of drinking.
Oh yeah, drinking culture in the UK.
A lot of drinking.
And in bass culture in general. But
yes.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how, like Evangeline said, you do kind of change personality slightly, and we're not blaming this on men. It's just how it is, and it's because it is for a men's section, and you know, you're allowed to act that way. That's absolutely fine. It's just we might not be what you expect. We might not act the same way. We might say no to going out. We might feel a bit uncomfortable. But the more you support that and you go, no, we want you to come out. We're really enjoying your company. We think you're an amazing bass player, and we would love for you to stay in our section. Hearing that kind of stuff is really important, and supporting these bass players who feel like they're uncomfortable is really important. In conservatoires, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just being aware that some people might feel uncomfortable and that they don't fit into this kind of lad culture, and that like even just the hi, just come and join us, like to be included. It's just something really simple like that would mean the world, you know?
I was going to say, if you turned it around and hypothetically, if you imagined, you know, an all-female bass section and a man was on trial, you know, sitting in his all-female bass section, how would you want to feel as a man there and being supported by women? Like, just it's the same thing, really. It's just a difference. It's really the same thing. It's the same as just welcoming anybody, really. You've got to make that extra step and put in the extra effort to make sure they feel welcome, because clearly it's not the playing that's going to hold them behind if they got through the trial, and you know, there's no difference between them and the rest of the people on trial.
I talk to a lot of people who also, not even just because they're a woman, but because they are just different. Like if they're from a different country and they can't speak the language or whatever, I feel like they don't quite fit into our bass culture as well. And like, do you know what I mean, you guys? In conservatoire, there's always these people that kind of, I don't know, they're not confident to come have a drink with us afterwards, or they're not confident to do this and that. I think
there are plenty of
some sort of barriers.
In all fairness, it's always harder being, you know, an international student, let's say.
Yeah, especially international.
Yeah, you know, your home students aren't going to have any problem communicating with each other without the language barrier, etc. There's all kinds of difficulties there.
Well, but just showcasing people, like casting the widest net possible. I mean, that's just so helpful to show that there are other people. And, you know, we're such malleable social creatures, aren't we? And I love that phrase, loud culture. We don't really use that here, but that is such a on-the-nose description of what bass culture often can be.
Loud culture.
Didn't someone say loud?
Loud culture.
Oh, my bad.
So like,
okay.
if you're a lad and you're kind of just like
lad culture. We don't use that either. Okay, lad culture. We definitely don't use that. Okay, lad culture. But you know, I used to play in this chamber music festival for many years, and for whatever reason, that group, everybody spoke really quietly, and then a new person would come in. There was this wonderful clarinetist from Central America that came in. He was really into soccer and everything, and then it was so funny to watch him just sort of tone it down in these rehearsals, and it got to the point where everybody would just whisper and long silences, you know. And so though, you know, but what you want people to be able to be themselves, you know, and so that's the particularly challenging thing with the with the system in the UK, it sounds like, or in London in particular, where you have this trial and it's like, okay, here's how you play, but how well do you fit in, right? And so that's and I remember talking to people such as Oren O'Brien, but others too, who are real pioneers, and they're like the only woman in the orchestra, that sort of thing. And just that sort of pressure of often not necessarily, these aren't necessarily Oren's words, but like, there's no difference. I just am going to fit in. I'm just like the guys. I'm just like that. But you don't have to be just like the guys, right? And culture, sometimes it feels real slow, but it does change, And if you look at those videos of the Berlin Philharmonic under Karajan, and you look at what the Berlin Phil now, it's like totally different orchestra, right? So these things, and especially institutions like orchestras, where people tend to stick around for a while, it can take some time, but things do change. And I think that's just, we want things to change right away, but if you're people doing what you're doing, I think that, again, going back, I think that will have maybe more of an impact. Well, maybe you do realize the impact it'll have, but I think that the work you're doing is going to be responsible for a lot of that change in our community.
Yeah, we realize that this isn't going to be instantaneous, and that's okay. But we hope that by the time that we are professionals and that we are working in the professional world, that we see this change happening. And it's really important that these aren't just conversations. These can't just be conversations. And that's why we're hoping that what we're doing is helping to make that less of a conversation and more of a reality. So we want to get to these orchestras. We want to get to these auditions as, I don't know, closer to 30-year-olds where we see what we want to see and we feel comfortable and we feel part of this. And I really do think that can be a reality. I think from what we're noticing on social media and the people we're speaking to, I think that it 100% can become a reality.
I mean, we've come such a long way. I mean, it was only I think blind auditions only became a thing, 20, 30 years ago. And we're really planning to just talk about more about the history, about what has happened and what has been changed, because we have come a long way, especially in orchestras now. I mean, you wouldn't expect, it would be such a surprise even for a female bassist to be in the orchestra maybe 10 so years ago, especially in the UK. So things are changing, but we just want to add to that change. And we want to I think we want to do a lot more things of acknowledging what has happened in the past, maybe interview a few bass players who have experienced what it was like 10 years ago. And yeah, it's just all really interesting, exciting stuff. And we want everyone to know about it, especially. I think it's really important for everyone to know.
Because we enjoy talking to people who are older than us and talking to our professors and getting these names of people we've never heard of before. And obviously, like you say, the social media wasn't around and you might only know the people in your establishment. And talking to these people who were in that environment, they're going to know certain people that we're never going to have heard of before. And we want to contact these people and say, like, can you tell us a bit about your experience? Can you tell us a bit about what you notice now versus what you need then? And just point it out to people that we're not focusing on the negatives. We're focusing on how much it's changed. And it's changed a lot. So we just want to say, don't focus on these negatives because it's not worth your time. It's not worth your energy because there is so much good stuff happening. So direct your attention to that good stuff and make sure there's so much good stuff that you just can't think about the bad stuff anymore,
There's so much that Phoebe, Evangeline and myself have learnt since starting the page, and like things that we were never aware of, like when did these blind auditions start happening and all of that kind of thing. It's not really in writing in many places. So I think another thing that we want to do on our platform is show the journey that has already happened or was created before we just hopped on the bandwagon, really. And just say, look, we can celebrate everything that's happened up until us, and then this is what we're going to do. And let's hope that this is what's going to be in the future. Yeah.
The blind audition thing is fascinating, and I've looked into the history a bit of that. People might not realize what a radical impact that had, but I was talking to Lawrence Hurst, who's the retired bass professor at Indiana University here in the States, and the whole education system, how musicians were trained, changed when blind auditions came in, because all of a sudden it was about how you're playing, not necessarily you were some guy studying with some other guy who knew a guy, and that is quite recent. I was talking a couple months ago to the former principal horn here in San Francisco. He was in the Chicago Symphony and a few other orchestras. He got hired by Fritz Reiner in Fritz Reiner's hotel room. It was one of those like, come over, play horn, sounds good, you know. And he's still alive. He just retired from teaching a couple of years ago. So, you know, we have that generation that was getting hired by Fritz Reiner and conductors like that still around. They're generally retired at this point, but it's really not that long. But then you look at the impact that's had, particularly in some of the other instruments. Violin's a great example, which at least in most of the orchestras I look at, it's pretty much 50-50. So that change, that system has had, but yeah, I don't know that it's particularly well documented. I'm not sure exactly what year that started to pop up here in the States. I think it was in the 60s, but I'm not 100%. And it sounds like it's even later in the UK.
It was interesting. Evangeline and I were talking yesterday about how many of these bass pedagogues are they're all still alive. I mean, you look at all of this Rabath stuff at the moment about his 90th, then we're talking about Petrarchy and all of these amazing people. And we're like, this is happening in their lifetime. And I was talking to my bass professor, Peter Buckoak, about all of this. And he was saying that when he was playing with the LSO, however long ago, the only female they had in the orchestra was the harpist because they couldn't find a male one good enough to play in the recording. And this wasn't even on a stage. This was in a recording. It wasn't part of what they wanted it to look like. And you think about how far that's come in one person's lifetime. It's insane. So I think if you look at it in that way, you start to realize that it's not as bad as it seems. We're going to change this, and it's going to continue changing. So I just think it's really interesting, like you say, how much can change in such a short amount of time.
Well, the positivity that the three of you radiate is just awesome, and it's so great to chat with you. I thought, wow, that Bassists with Boobs is super cool. I looked, and then I don't know what the heck I was on late at night, but I found this interview that the three of you were on. I was like, oh, they did a podcast, and so I think I was listening and messaging you as I was listening, and then I wake up one morning, I see you're all over Discover Double Bass, and like, that's great. So hey, anytime, anywhere, I'm down to do anything with the three of you. Come on anytime. Suggest anybody. The door is open. Whenever the heck travel starts up again. I feel like such a fool. I went to Leeds, but I didn't carve out time to go to London, a year ago. And it was just one of those crazy trips where like I had a conference right before and right after, and I just had time. So, but I will be back in the UK whenever both of our countries get out of this mess. So I'd love to meet the three of you in person, and let's have this be the first of many.
100%. Yeah, we'd love that. We want to do more in-person stuff as well. So we will be putting the feelers out for people who can kind of help us out with that. And we want to try and get concerts happening and get socials happening. And, obviously I think conventions is maybe a bit far, but we want to try and get these people known in person, because it's not just about these talks. It's about, seeing it in the flesh and hearing this music, because, ultimately it's about bass, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, thank you so much for welcoming us and getting in contact.
Phoebe, Evangeline, Ija, thank you so much for chatting. This was so much fun. Folks, I always enjoy doing these conversations, but this is one that really left me feeling so positive and excited. And it's fun for me to talk to people who, like I mentioned in this, a solid generation or so, or more maybe, younger than me, and just see what they're experiencing. And also talking to people from not the United States, living in this country my entire life. It's easy to get very narrowly focused into your own world. I found that to be the case for sure. So I just found this super inspiring. Definitely check them out. Instagram, certainly, but Facebook, YouTube, and yeah, they're doing great work. Can't wait to see what they do in the future. If you're new to the show, you may very well be new to the show. Welcome. We have done, what is this, almost 800 episodes at this point? Oh my goodness. Over almost 15 years, I think. So there's quite the back catalog. Contrabassconversations.com is the website, and feel free to dig through there or download our app, contrabassconversations.com. contrabassconversations.com/app, or just search for it on your app store of choice. If you're not on our email newsletter, we've got quite a community there. We send out a Friday roundup of the news. We find something cool for you to know about on Tuesday. Sometimes it's a piece of music that someone's put out recently, maybe in our store or elsewhere. Sometimes it's a video I've put out, or both, or something totally different. And yeah, contrabassconversations.com/email, or just you'll probably be prompted to sign up anywhere you go. If you're not following us on YouTube, not to send you a million different places, I guess I am, but I have been focused more on that the last year or so, and have been having a good time with it and trying not to let it take over my life, which video, it's very dangerous for video, at least in my experience, to take over your life. I have this rule of thumb that writing, like a blog post, any given blog post, a podcast is about 10x the work of that. And video, to me, is about 10x the work of a podcast. I find video super fascinating and interesting, and as I've been slowly, I like to think, getting better at it, I have found that it's one of those things that I can sink 30 hours in a week into easy. So I'm trying to do what I call easy YouTube videos. I can make some that take me 30 hours in a week, and I can take some. I did one last week about a bass stool. I think it took me 2 hours start to finish, which maybe even seems like a lot of time for like a 7-minute video, but I mean, that's about as fast as I can go with making the thumbnail. I don't think that includes scripting, but just like the active filming and editing and uploading and all that sort of stuff. So I've been having fun there. The podcast is kind of this machine that's been going for a long time at this point, but the YouTube thing has been a lot of fun, and it's probably taking up too much bandwidth, but whatever. I'm having a good time. I'm going to close out here. Thank the team: Michael Cooper, Steve Henchy, Mitch Mooring, Trevor Jones, and Mitch makes beautiful basses. Check them out. Award-winning basses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, mitchmooring.com. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we'll see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.